No helicopters have been procured for me to go to golf course. Thank you.
I never said he wasn't a great politician. I'm just saying he's a officer.
It's supposed to be an interview.
How'd you play out there today?
Well, I found the conditions challenging, mostly because there's no grass on the golf course, but there never has been.
I'm thinking about the swag bag, and I have high hopes for the swag bag.
When you got 3 crevices on the green, your course is trash.
What's happening, folks? Welcome back. Episode 20. Beltway golfer Alex Dixon here. Shotgun Start, one of the most popular podcasts in America on golf. Just a couple years old. Hosted by Andy Johnson of the Fried Egg, and this week's guest, Brendan Porath, formerly of SBNation, and can be seen, he's a golf writer in numerous publications, but can see on the Golf Channel as well. Local guy, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but has been here for over a decade living in Montgomery County. So I was super thrilled to sit down with him, get to meet him, and hear his kind of backstory, more about the Shotgun Start. And this episode is going to be the de facto Masters preview, because this is coming out the week before the Masters. So Brendan was a perfect guest. His knowledge of the PGA Tour is out of this world. And we got to sit down and chat with him about who he likes in the Masters, what a fall Masters, how different it's going to be. We asked him about some local PGA Tour players, although none of them are unfortunately in the Masters this year. Danny McCarthy, Steve Marino, Fred Funk, Billy Hurley. But if you are looking for one, kind of a local slant, the defending champion of this week's Houston Open, Lanto Griffin. He's a Blacksburg guy. He went to VCU, Virginia Commonwealth, so he's, I think this is his first Masters, so he'd be a great guy to keep an eye on and root for if you're looking for a local golfer in the Masters. Speaking of the Houston Open, super excited because it's a municipal golf course on tour. That's happening this weekend, week before the Masters. As much as we hate the Astros, owner Jim Crane, this is one of the good things he's done is fund the renovation of Memorial Park in Houston, which is hosting the Houston Open, renovated by Tom Doak. So excited to watch that. Don't get enough municipal golf on tour. And the other interesting thing, because of the pandemic and the delay of the Masters, the winner of the Houston Open is not going to this year's Masters. They'll be going into the 2021 Masters. But regardless, super excited to see the course. Other stuff going on, got some towels and hats in the swamp, beltwaygolfer.com. Check those out if you haven't already. Really appreciate all the tremendous feedback I got from episode 19, sitting down with Will Smith and National Links Trust. Got just tons of messages, everyone saying it was a good listen. So excited to have them on more in the future, and as I said in that episode, other folks involved in that project as it progresses. That's essentially it. I'm excited to watch a fall Masters, and hopefully listening to Brendan here will get you excited as well. Here it is, episode 20, Beltway golfer Brendan Porath. All right, Brendan Porath, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege.
Thanks for coming out. We are at my home high school golf course, Falls Road in, I think it's Potomac. Maryland.
Potomac. Yep.
And so you live not too far from here?
Yeah, a few minutes up the road. It's not bad.
I'm curious how many people, because so you're the host of Shotgun Start, which is extremely popular, but I'm sure a lot of people know that you're in the DC area, but I bet everybody doesn't.
No, not everybody. I'm not a DC native. I'm full disclosure, but I've been here. My wife is. In-laws are. I've been here over a decade. I came here right after college for a couple of years. But yeah, I feel like I'm a full DC citizen. I can't claim to be a native, and probably not enough people do know that. No, I think they associate me more with Cleveland just via rooting for those sports teams. But I have adopted, a lot of the DC teams as well, because there's not a lot of overlap or conflict there, right? Like the Nationals are my National League team. We don't have a hockey team in Cleveland. I've become a big Caps fan, become a big Nats fan. Didn't have much of a choice with the in-laws there. So I live and die with the Nats. Last year, I felt like I was watching the Tribe, in that World Series. So I feel like I'm pretty fully adapted to becoming a DC resident.
Indians and Nats in the World Series, who are you cheering for?
The Indians. I mean, that's not really a question, but yeah.
So you're an Ohio guy from Cleveland area.
Yep.
And so your wife brought you to DC?
Yes. I met her in college, and she was not going for the Cleveland thing. And yeah, I had my first job out of college down here. I love it, and it's obviously changed and boomed and grown a lot more. I was 05 was the first time I came down here.
Gotcha.
So it's really exploded even just since then.
Yeah.
So,
where'd you go to college?
Boston College, so not around here.
Boston College.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So you've been here for a decade.
Yeah.
You've been so I first became kind of familiar with your work. I guess SBNation, just reading some of your stuff.
Yes.
But let's go back. Like, how long have you been a golf writer for?
About that full decade. Yeah. I mean,
since you came to DC.
Yeah. The reason I came back here was I left law school. I went to law school in Cleveland. Thought I was going to be. I came here after college. Went home to law school. Thought I could get my wife back there. Dropped out of law school. Did the whole first year thing. Walked out of the building, one class, walked out of the building to get something for my car and just decided to never go back in. It was in the fall of 07, like the crash. Lehman Brothers, I think, had just gone down. I had no wife, no kids.
First year of law school? Or?
Second. So
year.
Start of the second year.
Okay.
I never went back in the building. I left law school with, no degree, but lots of debt, which isn't the ideal path.
Sure.
And, kind of wandered in the wilderness, media was really transitioning, right?
Yeah.
That era, like newspapers were trying to figure out how to go digital. Some of those newspapers were dying, unfortunately. I wanted to figure out how I was a passable writer. I thought it was okay. Yeah. How do I get into, I didn't have a wife and kids and all that. How do I get into sports writing? SBNation was kind of ascendant at that time, or coming on the scene. I'd moved back to the area. They were headquartered downtown. And I was fortunate enough to kind of finagle my way in and kind of, it was grunt work, worked my way up. Certainly not a lot of money and a lot of work and a lot of unexciting things to write about. But yeah, that's sort of the origin story. There's no direct path. There's no journalism degree. It's probably beneficial if you ask me.
Just jumped right in.
Yeah.
But so 10 years ago, I was actually looking up a little bit of the SBNation history.
Yep.
So is that before they became Vox Media?
It was like right around. They were Vox Media already, maybe a year.
But so they were based right downtown.
Yep.
But SBNation was essentially founded by, I forget the guy's name, but he used to have an Oakland A's blog.
Yeah, Tyler Blazinski. It was out in Oakland. So it started,
So how did it come to DC?
That's a good question. I think, our CEOs from here, so the origins were like team sites, right?
Yeah,
like an A's site, a Giants site, a Nat site.
I was a diehard Bullets Forever reader.
Right, yeah. That's one of the best ones. And then like the .com became this national site starting around like 09. They kind of launched that after the team sites. The origin is in those team sites.
Yeah.
And, golf isn't like a local sport, right? It's a national sport. And so like, I think 09, I don't know why it was in DC. The CEO was based here. I don't know why they ended up here, but that was sort of the origins of the national site.
Got it. But before that, were you a big golfer?
Yes. I played a ton in my 20s. I was a caddy. I grew up caddying.
Okay.
I was a big golf fan of the professionals. Yeah, I've always been a big golfer. I felt like I had a pretty solid working knowledge of the game based on caddying, based on following the tours, playing myself.
But one of the most impressive, fast forwarding a bit, one of the most impressive things listening to you and Andy on the Shotgun Start is your near encyclopedic knowledge of the PGA Tour and random players that most people don't know. Growing up, were you kind of an obsessive PGA Tour fan, or that came later?
No, not really. It came later. I think it came later. I was into the tour. I generally knew it. I followed the majors probably more closely. I was probably, you'd say, a casual fan. I knew the best players. I knew the best tournaments, certainly the major championships. I would say then, in my early 20s, I started obsessively reading Golf World magazine, cover to cover.
Sure.
And you pick up a lot of random odd things, even just stat graphics. And so you really I dove into the game, I'd say in my early 20s, kind of mid 2000s, 2003, 4, 5. In there was when I would really kind of started to get aggressively into the pro game.
And then you started writing for SBNation. Did SBNation, was their model was kind of, they weren't salaried writers, right? It was everyone.
There
was,
were. There were. I was not one at the start. It was just like an hourly
Got it.
gig that actually I did on top of a full-time job down here at night. I would do like a 4-hour shift for not a lot of money.
Got it.
And kind of try to distinguish myself that way, take on as many of those as I could.
But it wasn't like paper article, like freelance.
No.
Okay, cool.
No.
And so you had a good.
Probably would have made more money if it was, because
Really?
I was knocking out a lot of articles, in and out. So.
So, I was a casual reader of SBNation, maybe not diehard.
Yep.
So SBNation downsized quite a bit. What was that? A year ago, 2 years ago? When was that?
This year, probably, with the pandemic. I mean, they've lost a lot of talent, became a much larger company.
Yeah.
Obviously, they took on, politics and news with Vox.com and all sorts of New York Magazine. They branched out. Kind of the SBNation is the origin of the company, but I don't know. The sports was less of an emphasis. I took a buyout this year.
Gotcha.
Largely based on how the podcast was doing,
Right.
other opportunities I had going with Golf Channel, stuff
Yep.
like that, and the kind of instant impact of the pandemic. I figured with 4 kids at home,
Yeah.
I would take on less writing, and so but it was like, I don't know. It was, I think, some of the best sports internet ever made. Really, to be honest with you, not me personally. I'm talking about SBNation larger. Like
That's
I think
kind of what I was going to get to, because like following some of like the Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
And when that downsizing happened.
Yeah.
Like the outpouring of almost emotion on Twitter about like, oh my God, the internet will never see this kind of writing again. Like it seemed like such a tight family, and
Right.
the kind of the things that they could write about.
Yep. No, it was like, well, I mean, it's similar to what I was talking about with the digital media evolved too and transitioned, and maybe not all the best ways, maybe in some good ways, but I would say like 2012 to 18, 19, like it was like an incredible group of people and talent and voice, sports internet voice,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of setting a tone for how sports could be covered, differently. And I mean, a lot of those people who left are working at very prominent places now.
Right,
It was like a really great run of sports internet.
Can you still find a lot of those articles? They didn't like.
No, yeah, it should all be up there. Yes. I'd like to go back. and
It's funny.
check that
When I
stuff.
started reading some of that on Twitter, I almost felt like, man, I should have been reading this more.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was obviously like a total privilege and incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I walked out of the building at law school and ended up, writing at the Masters and covering the Masters and Ryder Cups and U.S. Opens, and like one thing led to another. I'm on Golf Channel, things like that. It's like, it's kind of a, extremely fortunate. I got the break. I don't know that I'm more talented than anyone else, and it was just right place, right time on a lot of stuff. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. It was.
But and maybe I should have covered this earlier, but like at your very beginning at SBNation, you just kind of started writing and said, "Here, I wrote this article about this thing about the PGA Tour."
Yeah,
or was there like an application process?
I mean, I wasn't necessarily like a golf writer at the start. I was covering a lot of DC sports, DC sports. They had like kind of fringe golf coverage, and I was like, I'm probably no one in house who followed the game necessarily, or even knew what's a drive, what's a putt. Like honestly, that level of knowledge was not around.
Right.
And so I sort of took ownership of the entire golf page. It boomed,
Sure.
by the metrics as they defined booming back then. And it was more just like opportunity, like, hey, no one's doing golf, or at least doing golf well, or people who were doing golf maybe didn't want to be doing golf, and it was just more of a chore. And so I kind of took on that after getting my foot in the door of writing about any and all sports. So,
Nice. Excellent. So, shotgun start.
yes.
So you stopped working at SBNation earlier this year. When did Shotgun start?
Shotgun Start had been going since around Labor Day of 2018. So it had been going for a year and a half, almost 2 years.
And how did you and Andy originally connect?
We met at the 2017 Players Championship. The PGA Tour brought a group of sort of these digital younger voices down there, which is, I wouldn't say we rip the PGA Tour, but it is sometimes a target of what we hope is honest criticism that, maybe is not offered in a lot of other places because of conflict.
Traditional golf media often doesn't say much negative things about it.
Everybody's conflicted out.
Sure.
The consolidated power
Yeah.
around media rights. And I have great respect for PGA Tour. I'm friendly with a ton of people who work there. But there's irony in that Andy and I met via the PGA Tour, kind of having us down at the Players. And so we met in 2017, kind of just hit it off, as friends trying to figure it out in golf media. I kind of kept up ever since. We text like nonstop coming out of that, just sometimes about the game, but a lot of times about like business and work and content ideas. And one of these was, I think we might have even said like a daily, like newsy podcast, and it's 15, 25 minutes every day. And we talked about that for like a year or two after, and then finally just like, let's do 3 days a week. Let's do something.
Yeah.
We talked about doing the podcast forever, and then finally launched it in 2018.
And so we're talking about Andy Johnson, your
Yes.
co-host on
Yes.
Shotgun Start, which is a very popular podcast. Three times a week?
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. A little different now in the pandemic. It's kind of whenever we release it, but it's 3 times a week, yeah.
But kind of irreverent conversations about what the goings on the PGA Tour and other tours in professional golf.
Yeah.
But so Andy, at that time, he already had the Fried Egg going, right?
Yes, he had, the Fried Egg was really established, a year, 2 to 3 years before we started the Shotgun Start. And he was down there at the Players 2017 as the Fried Egg. And he, we feel like with the podcast, we can be a little irreverent because we have a little bit of the trust of the audience. He's spent like his entire life reading about golf course architecture. He's a competitive golfer. Mm-hmm. I've spent over a decade covering the game, a lifetime being sort of into the game and captivated by the game. So like, I think we have a little bit of the trust of the audience where we're not just two complete clowns being irreverent, but we have a little bit of a background and expertise, and we can kind of pivot quickly from a serious discussion to a joke that maybe entertains and things like that. So
and that's a big piece of why it works. Is not only is it funny, not only you guys keep it very casual, but you guys aren't two dudes like who watch golf occasionally. You guys know what you're talking about and have some serious knowledge.
Sometimes, yeah, we're pretty, and we don't claim to know. We hope we don't, we don't come off as know-it-alls. We often refer to ourselves as idiots. We are happy to display ourselves as idiots and never edit out the horrendous mistakes or incorrect facts and information. That's become sort of a feature and not a bug. Is when we, get something horribly wrong on geography or golf history or things like that. But again, I think like there's a little bit of an established trust with the audience that we have a pretty solid base of knowledge, but we're happy to expose ourselves to significant idiots pretty often.
3 times a week. That's a lot. I mean, so is this like the main chunk of your work and time is on Shotgun Start?
Yeah, absolutely. Now it is. And we've been like the audience around us has been great. Like the community that's grown up around it has been sort of like something, and I don't know. It's like an honor and things that we didn't necessarily expect, like the community feedback around it. And so it's part of why I took the buyout of Vox Media. I was happy to kind of get out and obviously have kids at home, and my wife works, and we were like, I have this podcast, it's growing, it's doing well. It's all I do right now, and I feel like it's in a good spot where I feel comfortable and safe doing that. I'll probably, when we get out of this pandemic, try to get back to full-time writing. I've kind of been unable to take on some of these writing jobs that I otherwise would. But yeah, it's I don't want to say it's a lot of work, but it's work, and it's
I imagine you have to do quite a bit of are you doing much research in between?
Some days we are. Some days we're just hitting
you guys do
record.
deep dives on random players from the 90s or 80s or 70s, and
we were. I mean, when
I'm like, they can't know all of this off the top.
No, that would be hours and days of research. Those spotlights. That was something like born out of the pandemic, right? Where you're 3 times a week podcast, mostly focused on pro golf. Pro golf goes away. What do you do?
Yeah.
And so we found. I don't know. I didn't expect it to go the way it did, but 2 hours on Ian Woosnam, people wanted that almost more than they wanted the regular show, and the numbers sort of reflected that. I think we're going to try to keep that up. But that was not that was not just hit and record. That was hours of research and reading and watching stuff. So.
But I think that's pretty cool, especially for a younger generation of golf fans, you know, who hears about Woozy winning the Masters and
right.
I'm going to get the year wrong, but what was it, like early 90s, 91.
Yeah.
And not really knowing much about him other than maybe older guys saying he was hilarious and he was kind of a legend.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And I think our audience has come to expect some of the irreverent, some of the inane, some of the amusing, and, you know, you find, you know he won the Masters. You know he's short. You know, like, what do you know? But do you know he rode on the handlebars of a bicycle through Milan to make his tee time at the Italian Open? This little
I only
5'3".
know that because I listened to Shotgun Start.
Right. So, like, we didn't know that. We're reading about it, and we find this audience, and it's guys, you know, I'd say our listeners are probably mostly in their 30s, 40s, you know, 20 to 45 in there.
Yeah.
So their names they know, but
yeah.
maybe you don't remember the tournaments they won, but you certainly don't remember these details. Like Ian Woosnam's like 5'2", he hammers the ball because he grew up on a farm in Wales, baling hay and driving tractors with no power steering, and that's why he's got this incredible strength. Like
that's the backstory we need to know.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden people started loving these spotlights, and
sure.
you know, we view it as sort of like a separate product that we, you know, again, if we have the time, we can do a separate podcast or a separate series on to keep these going. So
I could see that like as a Saturday morning cartoon series.
Right,
you know, background on Ian Woosnam.
Right.
And so you have accumulated a fan base and a listenership really globally. I mean, I heard on one of your shows, like you've got there's some club in like New Zealand or Australia or something?
Maybe. I know there's a lot of people in Australia, a lot of people in Europe. I think that's generally just golf media, golf fandom, you know, where golf is a sport that is watched.
For some reason, then they're not listening to the Beltway golfer in Australia. I don't know why they're not interested in DC golf.
Yeah, no, I mean, we try to cover the Euro Tour. We try to cover everything, you know, equally. Yeah, so I think there's a fair amount of listeners down under Australia, New Zealand. We hear from a lot from the UK, but it's just where golf is big is listenership.
Do you get the sense that any or many tour players are listeners?
Yeah, there are definitely some caddies. Yes, I think like, look, we don't want to become the biggest podcast on the block, but we just, I mean, I don't know. Yes, we get the sense that it's like a sort of because it's a niche sport sometimes, right? And we're talking, like, you have to be able to be amused by us talking about the minor league golf tour for 5 to 7 minutes. And I think most people are the way we talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, it's an industry podcast, I would say, like people who work at the PGA Tour, people who work at golf, people who work at USGA, I don't know, or people who work at Golf Channel, I think are listening, and some of them are players, some of them are caddies. So yeah.
Have you gotten any, because you guys don't shy away from nicknames, from, you know, saying what's on your mind, whether it be making fun of somebody or criticizing people. Have you gotten any flack, you know, coming back in back channels?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we hear about it. We've had opportunities closed off, certainly, from some organizations based on, I guess, some occasional voice. But again, I don't think we try to be mean at all, and that's not the point of the show. We try to be honest, try to have a voice. We feel like golf media is everybody's. It's a weird sport in the way that everybody's conflicts out the wazoo. Whether it's a equipment company that sponsors you, whether you have media rights with the tour, whether you have media rights with the USGA or the PGA of America or the RNA or the Masters, like, this dulls the voice of this game we should be covering, honestly. And I think it's, you know, there are conflicts in NFL, like maybe CBS or Fox can't say what they want about the NFL, but like, there's still a wide swath of people out there covering it with some real voice. Golf, I think in the end, like, people appreciate it more. Like, we're doing a lot for we talk about the FedEx Cup a lot. Now, sometimes we take a crack at it, but we cover the FedEx Cup probably more than anyone.
Yeah.
But we talk about it in an honest way. Like, these points don't mean anything. They have no actual, real, tangible value or resonance with the audience. Mm-hmm. But we're still covering it a lot, and we're bringing a lot of awareness to it. I think, like, you know, I think having an honest voice and talking about it in an authentic way is real. value these days with so many conflicts out there. In golf.
And especially, you guys spend a lot of time on, if you turn on the Golf Channel, if you turn on mainstream golf kind of media, you're going to hear about Tiger.
Yeah.
You're going to hear about Bryson.
Right.
You're going to hear about DJ. You're going to hear about Spieth. But you're not going to hear about the kind of next, maybe the next year, but certainly not the Tier C guys.
Sure.
Certainly not many of the Korn Ferry guys.
Right.
And you guys spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, I think I hope in the end we're promoting the game and bringing an audience that, like, treating the core audience with some respect. People who love the game.
Yeah.
People who follow the tours. I think, like, hopefully we're bringing more people, we're creating more enthusiasm around it. And, like, we're not trying to just kind of take shots at people at all. And I don't think I think we're talking too much about that. It's just talking about it in an honest way sometimes. Sure. And in the end, like, that's what gets people more into the PGA Tour, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they tune out when they see, oh, here's the 800th video of, Ricky signing a ball and flipping it to a kid.
Right.
Like, I have kids, I love kids, all that stuff. Like, it's good content, but, like, people, that doesn't make people enthusiastic about the PGA Tour. Talking about the PGA Tour or talking about golf in an honest way, I think gets people more wrapped into the tour.
Sure.
And so, we try to spotlight all the good stuff and the great stuff and talk honestly about some of the stuff that's bogus.
Yeah. And in turn, we'll get more eyeballs on non-majors.
Right.
And tournaments that don't traditionally have high ratings.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it 3 times a week. One of my favorite tournaments is the Sanderson Farms Championship. Now, is that crushing it in ratings? No.
Like, I don't know anything about the Sanderson.
Right. It's an awesome tournament, in my opinion, in Jackson, Mississippi. And I think it's, I like talking about it because I think these are the origins of the PGA Tour, where guys would get in their cars and drive to small markets. And it's not always the tournament in New York sponsored by the big bank or the big, like bank, the Barclays, like that, the WGC, like where guys are flying in on their private jets. Like, I love the Sanderson because it evokes something of, like, a real community event and town event. So, like, hopefully we're bringing people more into the PGA Tour, more into the game, and creating more enthusiasm around it.
So what about the DC area? So you've been here 10 years.
Yeah.
We lost our regular tour stop.
Yeah.
The BMW Championship's coming to Baltimore next year.
Caves, yeah.
Caves.
Yeah.
We've got Congressional's got, I'm going to get the years wrong. Was it 2028 PGA?
Yeah,
it's like,
a lot.
When the announcement, I immediately started like, how old am I going to be when the Ryder Cup's
Yeah, I think they have a women's PGA first, maybe in 2 years. They've got a lot of stuff, I know that. It's all PGA of America related.
Have you heard any, or what's your take on DC potentially getting a stop again at some point in the future, whether it be Avenel, Congressional, or RTJ?
Well, I thought Avenel was supposed to have Quail Hollow when Quail Hollow was going to have the President's Cup. Like, it was a one-year deal, right? Because Quail Hollow had the President's Cup in the fall, which was supposed to be next year. I don't know. Now the Ryder Cup's next year. It might be 2 years down the line because President's Cup's 2 years down the line.
Oh, right. Okay.
But no, I haven't heard anything on, like, a regular stop, a consistent stop, which is kind of, I'm biased. I'm a resident now, but and I just talked about the small market stuff. But I think, like, DC should, or the Mid-Atlantic, whether it's Baltimore, somewhere in Maryland, somewhere that's accessible to DC, should have a regular tour stop. Chicago doesn't have a regular tour stop, which is crazy to my mind.
Wild.
Even with the Western Golf Association, they don't have a regular tour stop. Right. Boston doesn't have a regular tour stop. New York doesn't have a regular tour stop. So it's not, they have a pretty consistent one, on a rotation via the FedEx Cup. But I think it's a real loss that DC does not have pro golf on a consistent kind of appointment viewing basis. The Tiger tournament, I mean, it sort of evaporated. I don't know if it was lack of enthusiasm from DC residents and crowds, but they got crappy spot on the schedule. Mm-hmm. The whole title sponsor thing was sort of a winding road, right? Congressional sort of got sick of having it, which I don't necessarily blame them for having to do that every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the tour is lessened by DC not having sort of an appointment regular stop.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree. It's amazing. Since I started this kind of podcast to interview folks around the DC area, knowing that this is kind of underappreciated area. Maybe, I mean, it doesn't have the best golf courses in the world, certainly public courses, but the amount of people that are obsessed with golf in this area is like off the charts.
Right.
And that people that are really integral to the game, whether it be through associations, this, that, and the other. And then after I've started it, I realized that I had even underestimated that. Like there's even more than I realized.
Yeah, and like let's be honest, like a strong minority golf population too, right?
Oh,
which the tour should be critically focused on catering to, growing to, talking to, right? I mean, totally. That Tiger Woods event, it's some of the, African American, like strongest African American attendance on tour, and I think the tour should be really critically zeroed in on this market as a tour stop, both for growing its footprint, growing the game, the phrase I hate the most, but certainly attempting to become a more diverse sport. Because I'll tell you this, like, golf is thought of as this like rich country club, rich white sport, and it is that for sure. But at the tour level, there aren't enough black professional golfers, but they've failed significantly. The tour has failed to attract that golfer. The tour has failed to develop that golfer, promote that golfer. But it is incredibly diverse from an economic standpoint.
I was going to say, am I wrong in thinking it seems to be a trend in a lot of big-time golfers on the tour that they're not necessarily country club upbringing? It seems like a bunch of stories. Like this guy grew up on Muni. This guy,
Yes, Jason Day, came from almost nothing in Australia. Tony Finau was hitting balls into a mattress in his garage because his dad couldn't afford to buy a bucket.
That was Harold Varner.
Ricky Fowler.
Sure.
Right? He's a public golf course kid from
hitting balls into a mountain.
Southern California. His grandfather was in an internment camp. Like there's a lot of diversity at the top of the world rankings when it comes to there's not a lot of, it's not the rich white kids that in my opinion, certainly there are some of them. Sure. There's some of them, but I don't know the tour does a good enough job of promoting that. And then I think, in terms of growing or attracting African American golfer, like DC should be its, top priority. One of its that market should be a top priority for the tour.
Yeah. What about? So I sent you a message earlier before we started. There's a few pro golfers from this area over the years.
Yeah.
Probably the most successful, I guess, is Fred Funk. As far as when it comes from tour wins.
Right. Kind of a Maryland guy.
He used to be the coach at Maryland.
Right.
I should have looked this up. I know he had at least a couple tour wins.
Yeah, he won a couple times. He
won the seniors tour a couple times.
Yes. The game and the ball changing really hurt him, right? The ball, the switch to the ball, he was right in the kind of transition stage where that generation was really penalized, and the equipment and the way the game was played dramatically changed sort of in the middle of their career or even at the height of their career. And he's had a ton of injuries and doesn't hit it far enough with the way the current game is played, both on the Champions Tour and certainly at the PGA Tour level.
I should know this. Is he still out there on the Champions Tour?
I think he dabbles, maybe with majors. I don't think he's played well recently.
Yeah.
But he's like a character, right? He's a great character in the game.
Great personality.
Apologies, folks. I have to interrupt to give a shout out to what Fred Funk did at the Bermuda Classic. And my apologies to Brendan. I hope I'm not violating any unwritten code of podcasting, but our conversation happened prior to that tournament. And it was almost as if Mr. Funk was listening for some motivation, because not only did he compete in the Bermuda Classic, which is a PGA Tour event, but he made the cut at 64 years old, only the fourth player in PGA Tour history to do so at that age. Incredibly impressive. Fred Funk still getting it done. And now that I've interrupted, I have the internet in front of me, I can rattle off his career achievements, which is 7 total PGA Tour wins, including the 2005 Players Championship and 2 major victories on the Champions Tour. So impressive stuff. Fred Funk, no slouch, making the DMV proud. Again, apologies to Brendan for interrupting. Back to the conversation.
And then we got Billy Hurley III.
Sure.
Who had a big one here locally.
Yep.
I guess, was that the last year of the Tiger tournament?
Congressional.
Or one of the last years. I was out there. He had an unbelievable chip in on and get it wrong. I think 16.
Maybe the last year
to beat Hurley
congressional. Yeah.
But he's going through some injuries.
Yes. Yeah. He's and another one who's like, the game has changed so much so fast. It's like every course caters, generally advantages the longest hitters in the field, even if they don't intend it to be, right?
Yeah.
They've learned how to kind of crack the code, and Billy is not a big hitter. Sort of an amazing story. Again, someone whose story that the tour should push and promote, and I think they've done a good
Served in
job
the Navy.
with that.
Like,
Yeah,
basically didn't play golf for a couple of years.
Right. I mean, we see this. That's the great thing about the tour. There is like a meritocracy to it. The guy who just won, Jason Kokrak, we're recording this in mid-October, just won the CJ Cup. He's from Xavier University, right? Xavier's it's like 3,000 kids in Cincinnati. It's not Texas. It's not Alabama. It's not Oklahoma State. Same goes for Billy Hurley, a guy who served in the Navy and was so talented at golf and kind of overcome maybe not having the best facilities, maybe not having to go right from college into the pros or onto the Korn Ferry Tour or Web Tour, whatever the hell it was called then. Yeah. I think that is the great thing about the PGA Tour. You need the stars. You absolutely need the stars. And year over year, those guys distinguish themselves. But a guy like Billy Hurley on 1 week can easily beat Rory McIlroy, can shoot 8 shots better than Rory McIlroy, right? And I think that's one of the great features of the PGA Tour. You certainly need the stars to, attract an audience. But one of the things I've always loved about covering the tour is the post-round interview of a guy like Billy Hurley who hasn't won or has been through, been to hell and back or just had an unorthodox path, and they kind of break down. Like, that is a major feature of the tour, in addition to all the stars that certainly drive it.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the tragic story of his father.
Sure.
Two more guys. Steve Marino.
Yeah.
Who, he's local. I went to W.T. Woodson,
Yes.
UVA.
Yes.
He had some success on the tour.
Yes. Showed up at majors, contended at majors. He's a guy who could go crazy low.
And now he's mostly playing on the Korn Ferry, right?
Yeah, he's another guy probably who's, the game changed so fast for him. He doesn't absolutely murder the ball, but someone who's like sort of a legend behind the scenes for being a character, right? He's not, I don't think we're going to see too many of Steve Marinos anymore. Like, these kids come up optimized on perfect diets. They're probably not getting into too much trouble. Steve Marino, I'm not saying he got into trouble, but he lived life, right?
Sure.
He lived life like most of us do when we go to college or after college. He's sort of this like behind the scenes character people love to talk about.
Kind of old school pro golf.
Yeah, yes, right. Yeah. And I think that's sort of dissipating or going away. We might not see that. These guys are all going to be like 18-year-olds who haven't really experienced life, and they have the fully optimized swing, and they're kind of robot personalities in addition to that, and they're on perfect diets and perfect lifestyles and all that to succeed in pro golf. And Steve Marino was not that, but he still had insane talent to compete and succeed on the PGA Tour.
There's a great article, I think I've actually mentioned on this pod before, but I can't remember, so I'll do it again. But it's searchable in the Washington Post. This was like 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
A Washington Post journalist had Steve Marino play East Potomac Park.
All right.
And this was 15 years ago, when I think this was kind of maybe at the height, or I should say low point of East Potomac, when it was really not in great shape.
Sure.
And the article was hilarious. He broke par, but not by much.
Okay.
Maybe shot like a 69.
Okay.
And the quote was like, "How the hell does anybody make a putt out here?"
Yeah.
And there's one anecdote where the maintenance guys are right in the middle of the fairway, and they just stares him down on the tee. And he's
yeah.
It's a pretty good read if you can find it.
You get pampered with some of those conditions out on tour,
That's right. And then the last guy, kind of the younger guy, I'm curious your take on, Georgetown Prep, also UVA, Denny McCarthy.
Yeah.
Who's a member at Argyle Country Club.
I know. Yeah, Argyle and somewhere else. I can't recall, but Argyle for sure.
Everybody tells me he's also a great basketball player. He was.
He played at Prep, right? I know he did. He played hoops at Prep. So I feel like a broken record again, but another one who's like, he doesn't crush the ball. He loses strokes gained off the tee every year. That's a hard kind of pathway to success. Now he's successful. He's made it on tour. I say, he came up playing those junior events, like Junior Walker Cup with Spieth and Justin Thomas. He played, I think he played a Walker Cup. He played on like a Porter Cup, I want to say, with Bryson DeChambeau and like all these guys, right, that are winning major top of the world rankings. He doesn't crush the ball. I think he led the tour in strokes gained putting maybe the last 2 years, like a brilliant putter, brilliant talent.
Yeah.
Like, so to say like, you know, he played junior events with those guys, but he hasn't won on tour, to say he hasn't made it, I think is like a complete joke. Like the guy has his card, he's consistently on tour, he's led the tour in strokes gained putting. Like he's made it. He's succeeded. He's done it, in my opinion. But he doesn't crush the ball off the tee. He's disadvantaged in the way the modern game is played, and we're seeing that even sort of exponentially grow this summer with Bryson DeChambeau, all these guys chasing 191 ball speed, 200 ball speed, and you know, just being a brilliant putter and being maybe even the best in the world at putting will keep your card and keep you successful. But given the modern tour, the modern setup, the modern courses, and the modern equipment, like it disadvantages him in a way. It's a lot harder for him to win, just the way it's set up for him.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It seems so. It's kind of a similar story to all the guys you mentioned. So, what is your prediction as far as what the tour may or may not do to address that? As far as when I say address that, I mean, so everybody's going after this, you know, super long distance, super ball speed. Do you think the tour will change course setup?
No.
Do you think they'll do the ball, like the roll back the ball? Do you think they'll do anything?
Tour's not going to do a damn thing. Tour is fine to their detriment, in my opinion. Just, you know, Sharon, you won't believe how far Bryson hit it. You won't believe they think there's an entertainment factor to 400-yard drives, 450-yard drives. There is, but it's fleeting.
Yeah.
How many of the greatest shots in golf are drives that you remember? How many are just
DJ had a pretty good one.
300, at Kapalua. But think about major championships.
Yeah.
It's a putt, it's a wedge, it's an iron shot that Tiger stuck to 2 feet at 15 at Augusta, things like that.
Right.
Those are the shots you remember. Mm-hmm. The entertainment factor does not come from the 350-yard drive. Now, there is like a fleeting sort of fascination with it on Twitter and elsewhere, like, hey, Bryson's hitting it 400 yards, but in totality, it doesn't make the game more exciting, in my opinion. It doesn't make the tournaments more exciting. The tour, though, that feels that way, and that's fine. It's been a hot story this summer. Tour's not going to do a thing. They want to keep their players happy. It's a member-run organization. The members are the players.
Yeah.
And they are not going to take kindly to, you know, some executive in Ponte Vedra telling them, hey, you guys are hitting it too far, let's dial it back. So the tour is not going to do anything. Where it's going to come from, in my opinion, I think we're at kind of a tipping point here, is, I mean, the USGA and RNA are doing this distance insights report, right? It's supposed to come out this year, pandemic pushed it back. I do think, as is often the case in golf, I think Augusta National will lead the way in some form or fashion. Yeah. I think what we're going to see here in November could be really jarring, really upsetting to them in a way. Like 13 is not a par 5 anymore, and that probably has Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts not thrilled somewhere, rolling over in their grave, so to speak. Fred Ridley, who has some USGA roots, has played amateur golf and at the highest level. I think Augusta is going to be, if Bryson comes with a 40-inch driver, and it's not just Bryson now, it's Rory, even the best. These guys are already talented. They're already the best players in the world. They're chasing 191 ball speed. I think Augusta is going to see these guys playing the course not in the way it was intended to be, and it's been that way for a while. Tiger just yesterday said, in a mixed metaphor, like the genie's already out of the bag, and they should have done this 20 years ago, but I think they're going to have to do something. They're going to roll back the ball. I think the ball is going to be, or the Masters will introduce some sort of tournament ball so that Bryson's not playing 13 all the way up on 14 fairway or hitting driver wedge into 15, a par 5. I think the Masters will
Is there a way to do that? And I don't know the physics of it all or the engineering of it all. But is there a way to do that where it doesn't hurt the short guys just as much?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. No. I like the long guys will still have an advantage. They're the ones that seem to be fighting this the most, but they're still going to have an advantage. What it does is just bring other skills into play. So, like, I don't know, Zach Johnson, somebody like that. He's like an excellent, I mean, he's over the hill, but, somebody who's even like a Denny McCarthy, somebody who's like a incredible, maybe has some superior skill, with mid-irons. Well, mid-irons aren't really a part of the game anymore. Everybody's hitting driver wedge, and we saw the wing foot. Hitting the fairway didn't matter either. Does not matter. Just hitting as far as you can and then muscling it out with the wedge. It brings more guys into the field. Like, the guys who hit it the farthest are still going to have an advantage, but it brings more skills into the field. It doesn't make distance like the dominating
What about
skill.
the tour changing some of the courses that they go to? Like some of the newer design courses where they're, I think maybe more like Marion as opposed to.
I think the tour is going to go to. The tour doesn't pick courses based on how the players will play them. They pick it based on the sponsors
where
that'll sponsor them, and the money that they'll
fans.
make off of them, and the TPC courses, which is free rent for them because they already own them. The tour doesn't care about necessarily the challenge a course will present. Where they could change it is setup, and that again, though, member-run organization, these guys are not going to take kindly to tougher setups. And they generally make things pretty soft, and that doesn't do anything. It makes courses play a little longer, which advantages the longer players again. But like these guys just throw these darts into flags, because even in areas we saw a lot this summer, Andy talks about it, where there were a ton of droughts, these balls were kind of making dents in the green. And I think making courses firmer sort of evens it out. We've seen this over time, not necessarily making them longer. So that would be a way. It's not necessarily choosing venues. The tour is not going to do that. That would change this dynamic, but maybe it would be how they set them up and keeping them firmer. And of course, it's an outdoor game. You can't do that every week. But we saw that at Memorial, where they had it was running firmer. We saw that at Olympia Fields, where it was running firmer. The BMW this year, where even par was like kind of a approximate score. That wasn't because it was 8,000 yards long. It was because they had it running firm, and you had to actually control the ball, as opposed to just, you had this kind of safety net on the green, whereas you hit an imprecise shot, you knew it was soft and it would stick and stay anyway.
The weather plays a factor sometimes as well.
Absolutely. You can't do it every week.
All right, so this is we talked a bunch about the Masters in Augusta. So I didn't tell you this, but this is going to be the de facto BG Masters preview.
Okay,
so I think
cool.
This is going to come out Friday before the Masters, I think.
I love it. Yeah.
So one thing. So I printed up the Masters odds last night, and the first one I clicked on, I said, well, this can't be right, because I clicked on two, and one of them, DeChambeau, is the favorite at 8-1, and I realized that's the right odds. And keep in mind, these are from two different sites. That's from OddsShark.
Yep.
Which I don't.
Yeah, sure.
It's been a while since I was a big time gambler.
Yeah, no, same here. Although it's prevalent now.
But the other one on CBS Sports, I realized, these are the odds, for the original odds from back in March. So I thought this was interesting about how much they've changed. So, for instance, in March, Bryson was about maybe 10th or 12th down the list at 41-1.
Okay.
And now he is the favorite at 8-1.
Okay.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, he's demonstrated. There's been some intervening months where he's demonstrated his weight gain and approach to chasing distance has paid off, whether it was winning a major championship, winning in Detroit, contending consistently when the golf came back in mid-June. I think in March we were still sort of, he was still sorting it out. Maybe still packing on the pounds, pounding on the protein shakes.
The odds makers didn't believe that was going to work out.
Right. And, with Augusta, maybe that distance advantage might be mitigated in a way that, it was not at Winged Foot, right? Augusta still, they could have it running firm and fast. We don't know how it will be in November. That's sort of the unknown here. But you also can't have greens reading books. I don't know if that's sort of like a unique Masters thing. You're not allowed to have the greens reading books with the detail that he has every day on the tour.
Is that the only stop that's like that?
I believe so, yes. Whereas, at the U.S. Open, Bryson's obviously a very mathematical player. He's calculating slope. He's calculating every little friction angle, I think is the term he uses. So you can't have all that. Whereas Winged Foot, he's like flipping through, doing his numbers and calculations. He's not going to have all of that at Augusta National, because they forbid it. But also, distance is a massive advantage at the Masters. It's been that way for a long time. Even Jack Nicklaus was one of the biggest hitters on tour. Like, distance matters, but what we're saying is like the proportionality of it needs to come back into some of the normal.
I'm curious some of the guys you like. I'll read off a couple kind of just big swings in both directions from March to now late October. Tiger's gone. Tiger was a favorite, or he was the second favorite behind Rory at 10-1. He's dropped to 20-1.
Yeah.
Matthew Wolff was not on the board. This is like the top 20 favorites. He was not on the board in March. Now he's maybe about 10th or 11th at 28-1. Morikawa's jumped up from 41 to 28-1. Spieth. Spieth, he was still at 27-1. Basically the fourth favorite in March.
Yeah.
Now he's not on my board here.
Okay.
So those are some interesting ones, but I wanted your takes on that, but also just, who do you like as far as some folks to watch at the moment?
I mean, I think Bryson's somebody you have to watch.
Yeah.
He's the favorite for a reason. I think I'm curious about this whole 48-inch driver thing. We'll see. He's not going to put it in play at any event. Just show up and play it. Spieth, that's interesting. 27-1. That's like in pure respect, right? My friend Kyle Porter of CBS.
The fourth top. I mean, you had McIlroy, Woods, Rahm, then Spieth.
Right. I mean, Kyle Porter, my friend that writes for CBS, calls it his Narnia. He could be hitting the ball like complete crap, and he shows up there and he is hitting the ball like complete crap. He's lost. Mm-hmm. And he shows up there and there's something that works. And we've seen that over the years, right? Yeah. Guys who figured out how to play that even when they don't have their best stuff. Even Freddie Couples in his 50s. We've seen that over the years. So, I don't think he's going to contend, but I think he can play better there than he has been at other places. There's that whole, horse for course thing with Spieth. Tiger,
do you think his meltdown and when he was trying to repeat at Augusta, do you think that's related to everything that's been going on or not related at all?
No. I mean, he won at Birkdale after that. He won an Open Championship after that. I think it stunned him for a while. But again, it's just same issue. This modern game doesn't necessarily reward what he's exemplary at, and he's also he's actually not hitting the ball well. He's playing. He's all over the place, both with his swing and in actuality, his results. He's definitely his mind's twisted up in knots. He's hitting it. If you're not going to be far, you have to at least keep it in play, and he's neither. And so he's not a strong golfer right now, and that reflects, with a tumble to almost 80th in the world rankings as we're talking right now. So, go ahead.
Continue.
With Tiger, we just haven't seen him play.
Yeah.
He's, 40, what is he, 42, 43. I think that's fine. I don't think there's much he can get out of a normal PGA Tour stop anymore. Mm-hmm. He's playing this week at Zozo. We'll see how that goes. But similar kind of circumstance at the Masters where he's a little wilder off the tee, and that helps at the Masters. That's not as much of a penalty there because it is so wide. It's wall-to-wall fairway. There's no rough at Augusta. And, even if he hasn't played, we saw him last year. He won the Masters after WDing at Bay Hill, right? He wasn't necessarily hot coming in there. And I just remember, so many people think back to his win, the near hole-in-one at 16, right? But the shot that stuck out to me of that final round, I walked with him the whole way, was a lag putt on 9. It's he put himself out of position on his approach shot in 9, threw it way back of the green. The pin was front left, and that's a brutal green, trying to come down. And it was maybe the greatest lag putt I've ever seen, right? And that's a 3-putt just waiting to happen. He was furious when he saw where he hit it. And that's sort of the institutional knowledge of having played this for 25 years now that helps because they play it every year, right? It's a course they drop in on every year, and everybody's dialed in on it every year. So I don't know that Tiger. You're never going to get really good value with Tiger Bet usually, and we haven't seen him play, and he's not played well when we have seen him play. And this is who he is now in his 40s. He could strike one week, but it's also kind of it's drudgery sometimes, really. The wing foot was not pretty, and I think it's going to be like that more often than it's not. That doesn't mean he's not worth paying attention to, not worth betting on, not worth, relishing the fact that we even get to see him tee it up. For so much of my career, I've covered him as sort of on WD watch or surgery watch, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Just seeing him play again is sort of a miracle in and of itself.
What about any guys that may be, I don't know about under the radar, but maybe the lower tier guys or second tier guys that you think maybe?
So what I'm fascinated by, I don't know if I'm picking these guys, but it's just sort of a storyline, is like this younger generation that's immediately become successful this year. We've seen Colin Morikawa win, we've seen Victor Hovland win, we've seen Matthew Wolff win, and then play in the final group on Sunday at the U.S. Open. Justin Suss, he's not in the field, but he's like these younger generation that's starting to play. So Augusta is the one place where rookies tend to not do well, right? Our young guys tend to, Fuzzy Zeller, I believe, was the last rookie to win. That was like the late 70s. It just, that may be just sort of an anomaly, but it is one of those courses where experience tends to matter. Now, you don't need 20 years of experience. Maybe you need 4 or 5 years of experience. Justin Thomas has played it dozens of times, and for whatever reason, seems like he should dominate there, has never really done well. So I'm fascinated to see how these young guys who are carving it up on tour every week, and that's Morikawa, just brilliant, maybe the best iron player to come along since Tiger. Brilliant. Hasn't played great of late. I'm fascinated to see how they do with this course where maybe that does confound some of the first timers and younger players. Fascinated to watch that sort of dynamic.
Sure. Are you going?
No, not this November. Pandemic-induced issue. Not going to go.
They are going to have, obviously not having fans, but they're going to have a significant amount of media, right?
Significant, I don't know if that's the word, but yeah, I think it's like 120, 140. Obviously, it's a global event. That building's usually thousands of people from all over the world. It can't be that this year.
Yeah.
I think I heard they're going to have like 120 to 140 credentialed media members.
The fact that it's happening in November, anything that you see that's going to be dramatically different?
I don't know.
From no fans.
We don't know. Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, it's going to be overseeded. I think it's Augusta National is the one place in the world that can kind of, I don't want to say manufacture or create, but they have the wherewithal and ability to make it play like it would if it was in April.
Yeah.
And it might take extra money and extra effort and extra kind of smoke and mirrors, so to speak, but I don't know. We've never seen it in November. The players, the media. I heard there was some rumor they're bringing in like fall shrubbery and fall, to make, maybe it won't be azaleas and it'll be some sort of fall-looking
seasonal appropriate
plants. But I don't know that it'll play dramatically different. Like the weather's something they can't control. Like it could be like in the 40s or early 50s, low 50s for some of these morning rounds. So it could play harder. Like I think that was the one year Zach Johnson won it and the score was about even par because it was so windy and cold. We could get some outside conditions that really impact scoring because it's breezy, the ball's not going far, and it's cold and the ball's not going far. That could impact it. But from a course setup and course playability standpoint, I don't think it'll be too dramatic.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it'll be exciting to see.
Yeah.
And then had to have 2 Masters in the span of whatever, 5 months.
Yeah. Look, this has been a crappy year, right, with the pandemic, but my whole sort of credo or personal margin is like finding the opportunity from these horrible situations, right? And these bad situations. And would we like to have patrons, I should say, at the Masters, of course, but I think something cool that's come out of this is we're going to have a November Masters. We'll never see that in our lifetimes. We've never seen it in our lifetime. Like, it's not ideal. We would have the alternative, the normal circumstance, of course. We prefer that. But like trying to find rewards and opportunities out of this horrible year and horrible situation, I think it will be. I'm just happy we're having one at all, and it'll be super cool to see it in November.
Yeah, awesome. All right, last topic before I get you out of here. Been here for 10 years. You've been playing much golf in the area?
Not enough, not much. I'd probably lean on you to tell me. I've been fortunate enough to play a lot of, some get behind the walls, most of the private courses around here.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids under 7.
Wow.
So it's hard to kind of just peace out on Saturday mornings and say I'll be back in 5 hours.
I've got 1, and I have a hard enough time. But 4, wow.
So I usually play golf because of some charity scramble, or I'm on the road for work. I play on the road a lot more than I do here because I'm at work and I don't have my wife and kids, and it's hard. It's easier to get out. I wish I could. I just don't play enough around here. I hope that will become a larger part of my life once kids are a little older and there's more time to do that.
Very cool. Well, this has been fantastic. Maybe we'll get out of here too. You live nearby.
Yeah.
This is a fun little course. Municipal, Montgomery County, Falls Road.
Yep.
But listen, I appreciate you joining me out here.
No.
And excited to continue to see what's happening on the shotgun start.
Appreciate it.
And
appreciate
what
it.
you and Andy come up with.
No, this is great. I appreciate it. Like you've been a great follow on Instagram, great following the podcast. I think dedicating yourself to this local audience, covering the game locally. I talked about sort of minority participation. I found that to be incredibly valuable, following you and sort of understanding what's out there in the DC area. For someone who's not originally local, wants to know more about the scene. So I appreciate kind of all you do and your beat. So
thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that.
All right,
Brendan. Excellent.
I don't have a good golf game, but I don't really care. I'm a regular dude living in DC, and I want to know about DC-centric golf stuff. If you can tell me something that I don't already know, then that is great for me. I don't want the regular stuff. I want exciting stuff. I want different stuff. I want stuff I can't hear elsewhere. But I want it to be about DC golf.